everybody, it's Dr. Barron, and I'm so delighted to be here with the wonderful Sophie. Sophie Wedlock-Smith, is it?
It is, yes.
is um is a fantastic nutritionist from the UK, and she specializes in gut health, heart health, and hormonal health. And she has a wonderful following and advises in several different ways. And I've been very fortunate to work with her and to work together with her over the last year. And so we've gotten together because there's a lot of questions being asked
Mhm.
by our patients that really need answers, and we want you to be able to have those answers. So Sophie and I have gotten together to help you get some of the answers you need and see where you want to go with those answers. So I'm going to hand this over to the wonderful Sophie. She's got some brilliant questions lined up from her patients and herself, and I can't wait to get started. Sophie, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you, Dr. B. So my questions that have come from a lot of my followers as well, and some questions I want answering. So the first one is, many of my clients eat well and exercise, but still struggle to lose the weight. Could hormones be the missing piece? And what supplements would you recommend they should be taking to help support their hormones and weight loss?
Wow, that's such a lovely question, and very, very advanced question in terms of the fact that there is a lot of complexities going on with this kind of question. So, if we are saying what can, why do we have weight loss and weight issues in the first place, and why is it difficult to have weight loss? What happens is that it's very much about metabolism. Now, metabolism is governed by our nutrition, but also by our hormones. So a lot depends on how well we're eating. Then it's also controlled by how well our gut is dealing with the food and assimilating the food. And then how do our hormones help or hinder to actually get us to be in good shape, in good weight, and without any inflammation. So the question is threefold, I would say. A lot depends on your patients. What are you eating? Are you eating too much sugar? Are you eating a lot of carbohydrates which turn into sugar? So that would obstruct you from losing the weight. Also, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, that's going to be a problem as well. Now, if the gut is not in order, no matter what you're eating, it's not going to be digested very well. So then
Mhm.
you're going to have a problem possibly of bloating, food intolerance. So that can also make you very inflammatory. And when you're inflammatory, you hold the weight. So weight is also about inflammation. And finally, if you are low in the normal hormones that will help your metabolism, if you're low, for example, in estrogen, what's going to happen is that you're going to hold weight around the mid area, around the tummy, which none of us want to do. And what's also going to happen is if you are low in progesterone, you're going to be holding water, for example, holding a lot of swelling with a lot of liquids. So these are all possibly all of them are influencing the weight, but even just one of them can influence the weight. And the answer is that you've got to look at all three of those areas in terms of what kind of supplements to take. So if you need help nutritionally, things like vitamin B will support your metabolism. Things like Biosem will control the sugar intake using berberine. These are some genic supplements that really work extremely well. Also, magnesium is so important. If you're low in magnesium, you will also gain in inflammation. So that's a problem. Now, if you are having gut issues, then you should be taking a really good gut powder that will actually relax the gut, because sometimes the inflammatory tension of the gut also makes you very swollen and holds weight, and also repairs the gut. So something like, for example, gut health repair or gut rehab is a very good supplement to take. And then if there are hormone issues, the best thing to do is something called the Dutch test. It's a urine test, which is the only way really to check in great detail what's happening with the hormones. You will get some information from your bloods, but the Dutch test gives us 5 different levels of estrogen, different types of progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, pregnenolone. All these are really important. When you get that answer and you use bioidentical, very safe hormones in a very safe dosage, then what happens is you have got the recipe to get rid of the weight.
That was such a comprehensive answer. Thank you. Can I also add a little bit on there as well? I found find with a lot of my clients who are 35 years plus, professional women with great jobs, running a household, a couple of children, they are super stressed as well. And I think stress and cortisol obviously have a big part to play. And looking at hormones on the NHS, they tend just to do blood tests, which don't give you a full kind of snapshot of, it's just a snapshot that can change on a blood test because your bloods change regularly. So that's why the Dutch test is such a fantastic test. And that's something we can do together. And you give a very comprehensive feedback on that service that's really supportive. I just wish the NHS offered this to every single woman because I believe it would save marriages. It would certainly help the women understand what's going on in their body. There is no need to put weight on during perimenopause or menopause. This test, I swear, saves people's marriages and keeps them at the size 10 or 12 they want to remain at. It's huge.
It's absolutely huge, and you're so right. It changes the quality of your life during the menopause years, and also, as you say, you can actually lose weight during that period. You don't need to put it on if you are using all these tools.
Exactly. And my next question flows on really well, actually. How do stress hormones like cortisol affect fat storage, especially around the belly? And what supplements and foods would you recommend people take to reduce cortisol around the fat around the middle?
Love the question. Now, remember, cortisol is the fight or flight hormone. So what happens is that when we were hunter-gatherers, cortisol only got produced if we were being chased by an animal, for example, and really had to run for our lives. And then you would get this huge surge of energy and also a huge surge of hunger to feed your energy. So what happens nowadays is because we are confronted with stress almost every minute of the day, if it's not business, then it's family, then it's personal, in some way, that cortisol keeps spiking throughout the day. And every time cortisol spikes, not only do you get hungry, but you retain weight because your body thinks you're going into some kind of crisis. So that if that happens continuously, day in and day out, that cortisol eventually also affects your insulin. So you become insulin resistant as well as cortisol resistant. I call it that because that's what it is. Your cortisol is no longer in proper control. And eventually it can create all kinds of things like adrenal burnout. But the biggest problem is that cortisol spiking causes inflammation, which causes weight gain. Now, how do we deal with that? We need to look at adaptogenic natural medicines. We need to look at, we have a formula called Stress Less, for example, which contains all kinds of really interesting things like lion mane, scaletium, which is a South African herb, ashwagandha, it's very similar to that. And when you take the right range of adaptogenic herbs, also rhodiola is another one, in the right format, in the right dosage, that starts to control the cortisol. Now, once you control the cortisol, the weight won't go to the middle. But once it gets to the middle, how do we get rid of it as well? So then we have to watch that diet so carefully, because if we start eating high sugar or high carbohydrate, that weight in the middle is just going to stay because that's become visceral fat. So how do we get rid of visceral fat? Intermittent fasting is a wonderful way. Now, it doesn't have to be for ridiculous amounts of hours. It can even just be from 12 to 14 to 16 hours. And I'm sure that you can advise your patients very much on how to do that. That's a good idea as well.
Lovely, thank you. And then the next one, which goes on nicely, We hear a lot about insulin and blood sugar in weight loss. Can you explain why these are so important and how to keep them in balance? What foods and supplements would you recommend that can help support insulin balance and weight loss? Well, you've touched on that already, but I think it flows on quite
Let's
nicely.
go into more detail because insulin resistance is often hidden. What does that mean? It means that if you do a blood test, your glucose looks normal, and maybe even your hemoglobin A1C, which is your pre-diabetic test, also looks normal. So then your doctor says, oh, it's all fine, don't worry about it. But that's not true because your insulin is possibly spiking throughout the day without you knowing. So if you have all the normal symptoms that you are constantly hungry for sugary foods, that you're putting on weight that you can't control, hormones are out of balance, and you're eating sort of even a semi-high carbohydrate diet, their insulin resistance or hidden insulin resistance is going to be part of the question. Now, as soon as insulin goes up or spikes, your cell blocks any release of any kind of toxin or fat. In fact, it encourages it to hold more because insulin is what I call the inflammation creator in our body. So it brings the inflammation in because insulin shouldn't be high ever. It should, in the hunter-gatherer biologies, when we were busy and active and eating correctly, there was no such thing as high insulin, but high insulin is a bit like high cortisol. It attracts the inflammation. So best way to control it is with a range of natural organic herbs and Ayurvedic herbs, something called Biozem. It's actually, the name is taken a little bit from being a natural Ozempic because it has so many interesting herbs in it that control the blood sugar. It actually does an even better job because there's no side effects. But Biozem, we created a couple of years ago, and it's become one of the mainstays of the supplemental range to make sure that your sugar stays in control. Now, eating protein is the other nutritional best way of doing this because when you eat protein, you immediately stabilize your sugar balance. And guess what? The insulin comes down and you no longer have this problem. So these are the two most important things with the insulin. And, there's everything around that, like exercise, which also helps to reduce insulin. So even going for a walk once a day, I always say, best thing you can ever do, go for a walk once a day.
Love that. Thank you. And what are some hidden hormonal imbalances that can silently sabotage someone's weight loss journey?
Oh, I love that one. So, several. If you have an imbalance of pregnenolone, your body won't be making any cortisol or very little, and then you're going to have adrenal fatigue, which means you won't be able to do anything. You'll be lying flat out and you won't even be able to move the body. And you will also be craving foods that can give you more energy, which is not a good idea because that happens to be sugar.
So
Now,
how will someone know that they don't have the right levels? Is that going
A,
through
a
blood
Dutch test
test?
is, you can do a blood test, but again, you're only measuring once during the day, but the Dutch test looks at more often because the Dutch test is measuring cortisol. Now, if you have very, very low cortisol, it's because the pregnenolone is not making the cortisol and your adrenals are not making the cortisol either. So that's one of them. But that's one that's slightly more to the side. It's not the main one. The main ones are when your progesterone is too low, because then what happens is your body, you get quite anxious, which again makes you hungry. And then you also are holding excess water, which also makes you upset because then you look bloated. And all these things are not good for your mood and the way that you feel about your body. And then you go into what I call the give up phase. So then you just give up and eat everything anyway. So that's the
Sugar.
problem. Yeah, that progesterone, and unfortunately, estrogen is the same. Low estrogen is equal to depression. That's based.
Ah,
Yes,
interesting.
it is. So if your estrogen is too low, not only do you have low energy and lots of middle body weight, but you also have depression. And and the amount of women that get prescribed antidepressants when all they need is to replace naturally bioidentical estrogen, estradiol, estriol, it's so sad because you're not depressed. You're not clinically depressed. You're depressed because you don't have enough estrogen. So again, eating some foods, that have natural estrogens in them, things like tofu would be great. And sweet potato is wonderful. But
Oh,
ideally, yeah, have the Dutch test and find out where you are with it, because when you know where you are, then you can really do something about it.
lovely, thank you. So can poor sleep or irregular eating patterns throw off our hormones and stall fat loss? What supplements and foods do you recommend to clients to help support their hormones? Well, you kind of already answered that bit. But
Yes.
if you could answer a bit about sleep and irregular eating patterns, which I know a lot of my clients have, because they often eat on the go, that would be really helpful.
Yes, and late night feasting is another one. So problems with sleep are related to estrogen and progesterone as well. So when you don't have enough in your body, it's very difficult to get into that phase of falling asleep and staying asleep. The amount of women from all over the world that I have to advise on sleep disorder, because sleep hygiene has become the most important aspect of our lives, together with nutrition, movement of our body, and dealing with stress. So the best thing to do if you are not able to sleep at night, first of all, have a high protein meal for your dinner, because that also gives you a nice balance. Because if the blood sugar is too low or too high, it's difficult to sleep as well. But also, if eating things like sweet potato again in the evenings is helpful, because that feeds the hormones, or a little bit of tofu, that's also good, as I said before. Also, having good quality vegetables, which gives you a lot of different nutrients as well, because nutrient dense in the evenings as well settles your digestion and helps you to feel full. A lot of my patients say that when they eat badly, they eat, for example, processed food at night, that has all kinds of additional stimulants, and then they can't go to sleep because they've got all these these stimulating chemicals in the body, which don't help either. And do not under any circumstances have sugary drinks, because that will also disturb your sleep. Chocolate, unfortunately, it can be good, but the thing is with chocolate, it has a form of caffeine in it called theobromine. So having too much chocolate at night, one little block's fine, but if you start having too much, it might keep you awake. That happens to me personally, actually.
And me, actually. That's a really good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I know we've touched about the Dutch test, but are there any specific tests you recommend for clients who just can't lose the weight no matter what?
Yes, I recommend there's several DNA tests. Now, there's one particular one that will actually look at the reasons why you're not losing the weight. It will look at what type of exercise tolerance you have, what type of metabolic status you have, whether your inflammatory markers are causing it. So it's a fantastic test, which then gives you the information you need to know how to treat it. So then we know which supplements are going to help you, because it's not only is the DNA test telling us about the DNA strands, it gives us lifestyle medicine advice that helps the practitioner or the doctor to then advise. So the DNA weight loss test, a very, very important one. Also DNA stress resilience test to see how resilient people are to stress, because sometimes it's just the cortisol that's causing the problem, and when we solve that, everything else falls into place. Other than that, there is something called an organic acid test, and that looks at testing hidden fungal infections, because sometimes a fungal infection can actually cause a lot of issues with hormonal balance and also with weight, because it will have a lot of gut disturbance. We have candida, but we have a lot of other fungus as well that can cause this problem.
Lots of people don't actually realize a correlation between athlete's foot and candida. Is a lot of it sugar related and
Exactly.
coatings on tongues. And I mean, that's something I look at in my clinic, their tongue, their nails, their hair, the condition of their skin, and things like that.
Absolutely.
I also do another test looking at full gut analysis with a company called Invivo that I put clients through. So it's really interesting to hear about the gut tests you do. That will really support anyone. I think it's so wise to have tests because supplements are often recommended to the general mass. And when you have tests, you have specific knowledge that is just for yourself and what your body needs, because we're all completely different. We have different DNA, different fingerprints. So, of course, we're going to have different abilities to absorb vitamins and minerals and be missing certain ones. So that's a really good point.
Yes.
So, my last question, what's one myth about weight loss and hormones that drives you crazy? And what's the truth?
Okay, so what one of the myths is about weight loss is that if you eat less, you will lose more weight. And it doesn't actually work like that because if you deprive your body of nutrients, it will simply backfire and then you will eat less for a few days, but then you will binge eat because then and then it takes a few days anyway. So if you eat less, yes, you will start to detoxify a bit, but you won't necessarily lose weight. So many ladies came to me and said, I almost starved myself and still didn't lose weight. And that's because the metabolism just slowed down. And also there was water weight that was not getting lost. Whereas if you actually eat high protein diet, your metabolism speeds up, and that's what helps you to lose the weight. So people don't realize. So don't think that eating less is the answer.
And
And
also, like our body is a furnace, so we need to give it fuel to keep it burning, but it's just doing it smartly. And
yes,
sometimes it's easier to go to a specialist just to guide you rather than doing less in, more exercise. And that's the old way, but it doesn't work for people this day and age. Things have changed.
exactly. It doesn't work. And then going on to the hormones, the biggest myth and let's call it a misunderstanding.
Mhm.
My doctor says I don't need hormones and they're too dangerous anyway. Um, First of all, we are biologically, we are not programmed to live much longer than age 35. So that's why from age 35, the hormones start to go downhill. Second of all, the ones that are dangerous are the chemical hormones that you take orally and that get metabolized through the liver. Yes, don't
Mhm.
want to take those ever. But natural bioidentical hormones taken in a pulsed way, that means that it doesn't have to be every day. You slowly introduce them, and eventually I'm age 65 and I use them maybe 3 times a month. So you slowly, once your own body starts to make some more hormones through the adrenals, you then can pulse them so that eventually you maybe take it once a week rather
Okay.
than a tablet every day that goes through your liver and is full of chemicals, which doesn't help you.
Well, as a cancer survivor, I'm not allowed to take one orally because it's too dangerous, too high a risk. There is a risk related, but it's good yeah, I mean, there are natural alternatives that can help protect against osteoporosis, because as we get older, we are at a higher risk, unfortunately.
Well,
So
this
I
is the
think it's
thing, and
important that we're
cardiovascular
taking
risks as
things,
well.
yeah, to prevent.
Yeah, and you have estriol, which is not such an active form of estrogen. Estradiol is the really active one. So for my cancer patients that have survived, the estriol is the wonderful one because that will actually be very gentle, but it will also do the job.
And so you have all these in your range, don't you?
Yes, yes, we create prescriptions. They are all done through an EU licensed pharmacy. They are all pharmaceutical grade certified. These are all important things. And so then you can rest assured you're getting the highest quality, but with the lowest but most effective dosage, and it's all bioidentical.
And so people can come for the Dutch test and we can give them a comprehensive report. Then you can prescribe them the hormone replacement that's natural. and then they can have it delivered directly to their home, wherever they are in
Absolutely.
Europe.
So yes, so there is a doctor prescription. It's handled by our company, so we help with that. There's a doctor's prescription which goes to the pharmacist. The pharmacist sends it directly to each individual patient. That's the legal way to do it, with a full prescription, and everything is intact. So there's never a problem with this, with postage, and the actual quality is the highest possible.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think people are going to find this really useful. I found it really interesting as well. So thank you. And for anyone that's watching today, I'm giving 25% off coming for a consultation. So, but that's not 25% off the Dutch test, just coming to see me.
Yes, and we're going to also honor that with a percentage off the Dutch test as well.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And what we're going to do is, underneath this video, once it goes live, it will have both our contact details and our websites and our Instagrams. So all the patients that are watching this, please contact Sophie directly, because she is a fabulous nutritionist. And if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Dr. B. Great.
It's a pleasure, Sophie. It's been a wonderful time, and looking forward to many more exciting sessions with
Absolutely.
you.
All right then. Thanks a lot.